conditions of peace on individual, family, group, community, national, regional, international, and other levels.
The show will be hosted by founder of Peaceology and the world's first peaceologist, Dr. Peter K.B. St. John.
Co-hosted by his daughter, university journalism student Patrice K.B. St. John.
Dr. St. John defines peaceology as the science and practice of low stress and high joy.
Peaceology State seeks to increase experiences of low stress and high joy among as many people as possible. Again, join us every Monday 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Caribbean Time on Q95 Radio, the big station.
Kingdom Connection on Q95, the big station, every Monday 6 to 8 p.m. Enlightened and spiritually sound minds, bringing light and encouraging community in challenging and spiritually dark times. Kingdom Connection talking points pursue community education and spiritual enlightenment, biblical principles in leadership, management, and direction of society. Kingdom Connection. Call us at 767-449-3095, 3096-3097, or 767-616-4257, or 305-432-9624. Stay connected to Kingdom Connection, looking to help reduce incidents of crime and violence, improve social interaction in family and community, and to help enhance economic fortunes guided by biblical principles. Kingdom Connection. Tune in every Monday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Only on Q95, the big station. Blessings for all in the Q family. Right on Q.
Connecting us with the kingdom of God. This is Kingdom Connection.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The church is the conscience of the nation, not its servant, nor its tool."
The voice of God in Dominica.
We are standing on the brink of a new dark age, attractive and present, subtle and deceptive, outgoing and persuasive, a society of misplaced values.
We need Kingdom Connection.
We are now shifting from just facing the issues to the solution. Password to access is Kingdom Connection. Please download and save. Resolution is guaranteed.
Biblical direction for kingdom living. This is your program, Kingdom Connection.
Blessings pour on the city, Lord, let it rain. As we sing your praise. Now we're going to sing a song to pray blessing over this city and then to pray blessing over the nations of the earth. And so as you sing this song, let the power of our praise break the spirit of heaviness and bring forth healing and deliverance. Amen. Yes. Yes, we are salt and we are the light. We've come to break all the powers of night, and by the love of God, proclaim His liberty. We're ambassadors of grace. In His name we take this place. Lord, let your will be done. Let your kingdom come. Let your kingdom come, Lord, let it reign. Oh, let it rain. Let your blessings pour on the city, Lord. Let it rain. Let it rain. Let your blessings pour on the city, Lord. Let it rain. As we sing your praises, break the curses that hear your people pray. Sing your you have won the fight, oh Lord. By your death, our lives been restored. You have risen now to vanquish all our foes.
A very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. This is of Q95 Radio, of course, at 6:02 in the evening. Monday evening it is, the 29th of July. It's already the last Monday of the 7th month of the year. Can you imagine this? But it's a great Monday, very hot here in the lovely Commonwealth.
Yes, Lord, as we sing your praises.
And so let me welcome you to tonight's program, your favorite program on radio on a Monday night. On the right side always. Tonight it will be a rather very interesting conversation. We expect to have a guest from Trinidad online with us. And so I ask you to sit tight, get your easy chair out, depending on where the temperature is, how the temperature is by you. You may want to have a very cold drink this afternoon.
Oh, let your blessings fall on the city, Lord. Let it rain.
Get a little snack, you know.
Sing over your city. Oh, let your blessings fall.
I'll tell you what I recommend this afternoon. The leftover dashino, you know what you have? Put it next to the cool pot. And you can have it with a little bit of cocoa tea if you want. Nicely epiced. A little coconut milk in that.
We're just going to take us.
Whatever you do, though, stay tuned into us. We're about to do the roll call for this evening.
This place.
The numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097. You can do the DG thing on 616-4257. The overseas line, my brothers and sisters, my friends, is 305-432-9624. It's your roll call tonight on Kingdom Connection, the 29th of July. And all the lines are going at the same time. Good evening, you on the right side.
Good evening, Pastor Rodney, and good evening to the other pastors that will be joining you later.
Yes. Point Michelle is well locked in. On the right side, good evening.
Good evening. I'm just leaving Parliament. I'm coming to me present.
You live in Parliament. You have a hat on your head?
Yes, what's the name?
On the right side, good evening.
Hello, good evening, Pastor.
Yes, good evening.
Eric, Pastor in the hall.
Yes, we're there.
Big King that is on the right side.
Good.
And I would like to send happy birthday greetings to my daughter, Kim Shadover Charles. She's celebrating her birthday today, and she has got guidance, blessings, good health, and all that God has to offer to her.
Okay.
And all this coming from the big step.
The big step. On the right side, good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Everybody's in?
So far, so good.
Okay, just reporting from Marseille, France, the Olympic Village. I'm just looking at Dominica taking their first dip in the swimming pool. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
God bless you too. On the right side, good evening.
Pastor Benawavin Kinfield on the right side.
Benawavin Kinfield, well locked in. On the right side, good evening.
On the right side, good evening.
Yes. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Laplin.
Laplin. Pleasance Laplin in the house. God bless you now.
With 10 children, my queen didn't have it easy. We had to grow food, mine chicken, duck, and turkey. Well, in the backyard, you find a guava tree. To do stamp brand, 5-finger, boomerang, chuli, mango.
On the right side, good evening.
Well, you don't know it is a mystical unlike onion having a thick cover juice, some lime juice in that, and some whole wheat with peanut butter.
Whole wheat bread.
Yeah, good.
With
Good
peanut
food in
butter.
1990.
Okay, pardon.
Unlike onion.
Nice, man.
On the right side.
Nice, nice,
Yes,
nice,
sir.
nice.
My children must not make jail. Mommy, God's children must never fail. Mommy, resist the dark side. Get on the Lord's side. Forget the broad side. Stay on the bright side. What about the gangster living? Stealing and stabbing. Easy money coming. Boy, that is the dark side. You want me to find my purpose and live like Jesus. We young and we don't make no fuss. Point to be a back.
On the right side, good evening.
Good evening, Pastor.
How you doing?
Fine a bit.
Well, good.
Yeah, how are you and family?
We're doing very well, thank God.
Amen. How about my pastors? Are they there?
Yeah, thank you. The pastor is there, Mr. Jack.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. Good evening. Good evening.
Okay. Nice.
Right.
As usual, I say hi to all my people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy, the Ali. I'm calling us today. He does get mad when I record him.
He does get mad? Hila,
Yeah,
Papa.
he tell me he'll get he gets mad.
Okay.
So I call him Alex. All right. I hope you hear me.
All right.
So hello to all my people.
And
as usual,
too numerous to
one
mention.
first prayer, one first
With love. On the right side, good evening.
Good evening, Pastor Randy and all the other pastors.
Yes, good night.
La Plaine and Guadeloupe, Bienboaché.
Wonderful.
Big step, good night.
Of course. On the right side, good evening.
Good evening, Pastor and the other pastors. Mountjoy Wonder, I'm locked in.
Oh, glad to hear you. Glad to hear you in Warner.
Side, stay on the Lord's side. Resist the gun side. Get on the bright side. My son.
We'll change gears in a moment, ladies and gentlemen.
Remember what Mommy said?
Let's take this call on the right side. Good evening. Hello.
Better late than never. Good evening, Pastor.
Yes, good evening.
I'm there listening to you. There is for playing.
Of course, man.
All angles.
All angles. Take care.
Direction, bring the solution, the rudder correction. This generation have some confusion.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we change gears and we get into a talking points commentary for the night, the 29th of July 2024.
I hear the sound of rustling in the leaves of the trees. The Spirit of the Lord has come down on the earth. The church that says to slumber has no reason from its knees. My bones are responding to the fruits of new birth. And is it now one time for declaration? The words will go to all men everywhere. The church is here for the healing of the nation. Before the day of Jesus right now, my tongue will be the pen of ready writer. What the Father gives to me, I see. I only want to be. I only want to glorify.
Ladies and gentlemen, by way of our talking points commentary this evening, we have a few things to just chat with you about. And the first thing is that we saw the inauguration of the Roman Catholic bishop, Bahamian by birth, inaugurated as the 10th Bishop of the Roman Catholic Church in Dominica. And we extend our congratulations to the Bishop and trust that the work that has already started here in terms of ensuring that there is, justice and righteousness and equity, and that the rule of Christ reigns here will continue. So we congratulate the Bishop. We also congratulate the first, and we did it last Monday night, the first female Kalinago chief. Kalinago is making history in terms of leadership in our country for the last couple of years. We've had the first female president, and that's a Kalinago. And now we have the first female Kalinago chief. And we are grateful, and we congratulate both of them for that. Okay. We also understand that Dominica is opening its Olympic bid today in swimming, I think. And we look forward to, a medal so that, we can be on the podium somewhere and Dominica's flag can be hoisted in Paris. So those who do not know where we are will want to know Ola Dominic Salae. So let's wish the participants well as they start their bid at the Olympics today. We want to condole with those, the lady who lost her life very tragically, but, freaky accident in Granby. Pastor Jack, my condolences to you, Pastor Jack's cousin. It's never nice when somebody just dies. And so we condole with the family. And the other one I understand who's as well not well, injured, we pray God's healing upon this other lady, that she will recover from the pain and the anguish of the accident happened there in Granby. We listened to some of us who listened, some people who listened. I didn't listen to the whole speech, really. I was engaged in doing some other important matters. But we listened to the budget address delivered by the Honorable Finance Minister, Honorable Irvin McIntyre. And there were a few things that we note. One of them is the increase on alcohol per liter. The intention is to reduce NCDs. Okay. And then we hear about the beginning or the establishment of a cannabis, did you say a committee, and they will have a legal person to draft and so on as to how we can use cannabis for medicinal purposes. And that's something that we should have done 9 years ago. We're still trying to work on it now while everybody else is taking off. And to be honest with you, in a sense, it might be a good thing to wait to do it, maybe to observe the mistakes that other people are making. The downside to that is anything we do now, we need to do it to increase our national income, and especially the income of the people. And if you wait until the boat has left, chances are you would be too late. So let's hope that something comes out of that. At one point, we know that the Prime Minister did say that this cannabis thing will, worth nothing. I'm putting that in language for you to understand. He did say that that's not going to take us anywhere. It will have no benefit, no economic benefit from medicinal cannabis. However, we have seen other countries take off doing that, and they seem to be getting some economic benefit. So I Hearing now that the government wants to do that is welcome news, but it just seems that people don't know where they're going. People do that when they don't have a vision. So you say one thing now and you change your mind next day without providing a reasonable excuse, because you don't have a vision. You do not know where you're going, and that is the result of firefighting, management firefighting style, if you ask me. Let's hope that in fact that changes, because I know that government had a technical advisory committee on the legalization of cannabis for medicinal purposes. I think it was not 2019, 2020, if I don't mistaken, maybe later than that. 2021, 2022. Yeah. We don't know where that's going, and I'm sure that my information is that committee examined regulations from a few countries. There were presentations made by several experts in that regard. I remember when government decided to take this thing to the public, and as usual, government does things to look to see how many people they can win on their side. And after my presentation, Reginald Austri, then minister of whatever he was, thought I was talking nonsense. I don't think he listened to one thing I said. Poor jab. But he said I was talking nonsense, nonetheless, because that was not in the mind of the government. And in essence, and I still have that somewhere. I think it's saved on here as well. In essence, I was saying that the way that the government was going was not good. To legislate that people can have 1 or 2 joints and that they can plant free marijuana trees in their yard was, if you ask me, was crazy and still is crazy. And I have not done a scientific survey on that. But if you look around you, you will see many more young people who seem to be, off their head. And my suspicion is, and I'm hoping that the acute psychiatric unit would probably conduct some survey, scientific survey to either deny or confirm this. My honest view is that we have an increase in drug-induced psychosis among these young people. I mean, young boys just losing their minds and left, right, and center. Some of them are given the thing, and other people, make some things in it for them. Once you open the door that way, and it's not properly done, then that's what you do. You destroy people's children, which is what I was saying, Mr. Austri, because it was important, and I said it was critically important that we safeguard minors. If you give family the liberty to plant fruit trees, this family give the family liberty to plant fruit trees, what do you think was going to happen? What do you think they think marijuana for? So it was in my mind a callous way to get votes for people who want to smoke a joint. It's really callous. And those of you who smoke joint, I don't care what you think. I think the government was irresponsible to do that, because I don't see the economic benefit or the social benefit to giving people to do that. What I'm seeing, what I'm noticing is more young people blowing their brains off. And I'm really hoping that there would be some statistics on that so we can prove that's what it is, instead of doing this thing right. Like I said in my presentation, it was wrong to criminalize a herb. And I say so with the authority of the Bible. Okay, it's wrong to criminalize a herb. You can look at, the effects of what you do with the herb, and the use and overuse, like they do for every drug. So if you use that herb to do something that causes people to lose their best brain, then you do something about that. But just criminalizing a herb was not a wise idea, whoever did it when it was done. But to go and do what you all did there was callous and irresponsible. So I'm hoping now that you all will pull the reins on this and do something responsible. Okay, license ganja growers for the purpose of medicine. Let them have a card and let them do what they have to do within a particular control industry, like every drug would have. Every drug would have a certain level of control, and you need to do that. And I'm talking about medicinal drugs, right? So, I'm glad that you're doing something. It's better late than never, but get it done. Get it done. Please don't let it be another talk, like a lot of things that we talk about and we kick the can down the road and it's never done. And it's never done very often because somebody doesn't have a personal benefit in doing it. I have observed that when things have personal benefits to people, it's done fast. When it does not have personal benefits to people, then it's not done. When it's benefiting the entire population, then no work is done in that regard. And I ask that every one of you, please do something about this thing and do it well, okay? That's just our advice here on Kingdom Connection. And then finally, I will never stop talking about this once I'm on Kingdom Connection until it happens. Dominicans, you have to clamor, talk, push, shout, scream, make noise for proper electoral reform. You have to. If you want Dominica to remain for Dominicans, you must. You have to. You're born and compelled to. Okay? Because if you don't, one of those days, Dominica will be a long dream for most of us. And like I tell you all the time, I'm not like a lot of people. I don't have a second passport to go no way. I live here and I can't go anywhere. Okay, so I think we should look at this and let's do it properly. Okay, your talking points commentary for tonight, Monday, the 29th of July, 2024.
What the Father gives to me, I'll see. I only want to be free. I only want to glorify the King. I only know prepared by God and ready for war. Rocking up the Spirit is the word of command. We rise a mighty army at the beating of the Lord. The devil sees and fails. For this time is at hand. Oh, children of the Lord, hear a commission. We should love and serve the Lord as one. The Spirit would be hindered by division. It would look like Jesus and it on. My tongue will be the pen of a ready writer. And what the Father gives to me, I speak. I only want to be free. I only want to glorify the King. My tongue will be the pen of a ready writer. And what the Father gives to me, I'll speak. I only want to be free. I only want to glorify the King. My tongue will be the pen of a ready writer. Gives to me, I only want to be. I only want to glorify the King. I only want to be. I only want to glorify the King. I only want to be.
Tell me what is going on. It looks like the churches have taken the place of Iran and Afghanistan. No longer we come together to fight the same cause. No wonder that group of the church is deacon ball. We forget we should not be fighting flesh and blood, but against principalities and against powers.
I'm trying to rectify a little technical glitch here, but I have Pastor Jack with me. I'm hoping to have Pastor Matthew on the line. A very good evening, Pastor Jack.
Very good evening to you and to all the listeners and to all the people from here, there, everywhere. I want to say a very good evening to Pastor Matthew, wherever he may be. And a very good evening to my folks all over, my posse in Texas. Marcy, if you listen, a very good evening to you, Marcy in Texas, and Catherine. To you, Philip in Tampa, to Dr. Laura in Atlanta, Bernard, and my children who are listening, who may have found Q95 tonight. I want to say a good shout out to you, to my friend in Canada, and all of you trying to see how you can get knife, and that's very late. How you can get onto Q95 after how many years?
20 years.
20 years we're on the air. But you are welcome to join the band. To Glenn, a very good evening to you. Shout out in Atlanta, one of my passes, good supporters. To all my friends everywhere who keep saying, and I appreciate it. I don't call nobody. I listen in. So keep listening and then find some other way to make your input. Even though you may not want your voice on the air, but you may have recommendations, suggestions, and things that can help us do better. We have not yet attained, according to St. Paul. We're still trying to push on to see how we can be of the best use to our fellow Dominicans here and everywhere. To those of you in Grand Bay and to the rest of the family of Grace, let me take this opportunity to say all Eric and all the rest at IDB Sympathy. I will try to drop by sometime. And I remember Grace in the most loving, kind way from our childhood up. And it just moved me to know that was the last person I was waiting to hear passing this accident. Anyway, the strength of God be with you, and we'll talk soon. And to those of you Eagle Heights people in Granby, Fishland, Bellevue, and all the folks who keep listening, a very good night. Achi, good evening in Bellevue. I want to give a good shout out to you, my darling. I never forget you. So, to all of you listening tonight, and a big thank you to all our supporters. And from Open Arms Charity, we want to say a big thank you to you. And we look forward to our back to school program in all districts that we can cover. And you have said we are focusing on Roseau North again. Last year it was Carib Territory, and this year is Roseau North. But we are stretching our tentacles as far as we can to touch every school, every child. We don't care where you come from. We just keep away from politics and religion. And we just want to touch you with the love of Jesus in every way. So for ambassadors, we said get into high gear. School is about to reopen. Parents are spending money. And be sensitive to all the people around you to see how a child can go back to school in grace and style. Kick back, relax, and enjoy the program with us.
Thank you, Pastor Jack. Pastor Matthew, very good evening to you.
Pleasant good evening to you, Pastor Randy and Pastor Jack. I'm trusting that you can hear me well.
I'm hearing you loud and clear, my friend.
Thank you very much. And Pastor Jack, I'm trusting that you're having a good day today yourself.
Yeah, I hope you so.
And we're thankful to the Lord for his grace and mercy and, of course, his love. That continues to be just my motivation, honestly. Is these days we're living in a world where people are motivated by all kinds of things, and it's interesting how the discussions sometimes take us into all kinds of direction. But I am so thankful to the Lord for the motivation for us as men of God and as children of God. You know, we understand how and where God has taken us from, and His goodness in our lives, and that's our motivation. Okay, a motivation which is literally one of sacrifice and given over to love. And we're thankful, you know, to what God is doing. And I'm trusting for all of you, those of you who continue to send your messages across the Dominica, the Caribbean, by extension, the world. We're so thankful for all your emails and text messages, and thankful for what you're doing. Of course, Randy, this is an important moment for me, really. You know, this is my countdown, really, in terms of ministry to a certain extent. And so I'm thankful to God for all that He has done in my life personally, and where He's taken me from, and how much He has helped me to be the person that I am. And in the midst of everything else, God continues to be strong. And I want to say to those of you, I don't even know who I may be talking to this afternoon. I'm trusting God that wherever you are and you feel down and you feel distraught, you feel like giving up, I want to say to you, there is still enough that you can hold on to, that you can still betrayal. In the midst of all the circumstances that you might be going through, God is still on the throne, and He insists upon your knowing that, so you can trust Him in the midst of the darkest moments. So God's blessings on everybody. As we continue to have this program, we know that you will be blessed as always, and we continue to do as much as we can to keep it that way. God's blessings.
Thank you very much, Pastor Matthew, and I'm so happy that you are on with us. And we are this afternoon hopefully covering some very important subjects. And we want every one of you to listen. Those of you in Canada, good evening. Those of you listening in the US, in Dominica, and of course across the region, we are so happy to have every one of you join us for the program this evening. I have a very special lady with me online, and I'm going to introduce her in just a moment. And so I want every one of you as well on Facebook to join us doing that as we do that. And that is a lady who, enjoyed the hospitality of Dominica recently. And I'm happy that she enjoyed our country. And I'm hoping that she will come back one of those days. Rebecca Govaya is from Trinidad and Tobago. A very good evening to you, Rebecca.
Good evening, Pastor. Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you. It's my pleasure to have you. I wished you were here instead.
Yeah, me too.
But it's very, very good to have you. Very good to have you. Just give me 1 second, and I'll come right back to all of you. Just give me 1 second. Let me do this.
Thank Thee each morning for a newborn day.
Rise and shine. What's on your mind? Wake up to gentle, inspiring, spiritual, and positive motivational thoughts every morning. Get your day started on the right track. It's your time to shine. Call Q95 and tell the world what's on your mind. Speak to the issues making the news that concern you from day to day. Rise and shine. What's on your mind? Only on the big station. Only on Q95.
Thank Thee for the trees and the deep blue sea.
All right, we're right back here, ladies and gentlemen. And I was saying with you that we have with us Miss Rebecca Govaya along with us. And Matthew is online. Pastor Jack is in the studio with me. We have a challenge, ladies and gentlemen, that is before the court. And the Evangelical Association of Dominica will join the government with that challenge. The challenge is to decriminalize abortion, and we faced a challenge a few months ago with the whole LGBTQ and the Buggery law in Dominica, and so that's a second one. Today, though, I want us to talk a little bit about a few subjects that I think is very, very important. And Rebecca is, if you ask me, she's been involved in the lives of people as a professional dealing with women and health issues and so on. Rebecca, first, give us a background of who this Rebecca Govaya is, please, so our listeners can know who we're talking to.
All right, sure. Thank you. Well, once again, thanks for having me, and a good evening to all of your listeners, wherever you are listening from. I'm happy to connect with you. So I'm based in Trinidad. I am a wife and a mom to 4 children. My children are ages 13 to 22. And my background professionally is I'm a trained attorney, but I spent many years, over 15 years actually, working with women and children in various crisis situations. So we provided transitional housing, for displaced mothers and their children, either because they were evicted or some sort of relationship crisis or domestic abuse, or whatever the circumstances were that put them on the verge of homelessness. I've also over the last 9 years been teaching a program called Healthy Respect to children and youths from the ages of 9 to 19. And what that program does, it's an evidence-based risk avoidance curriculum that teaches young people to make healthy choices and avoid high-risk behavior and stay on a trajectory for good development. And of course, when we worked with women and children, a lot of the women we worked with were moms who were pregnant and faced with a decision as to whether to carry their babies to term or whether they wanted to terminate that pregnancy, or even if not terminate, but they had multiple crises to work through in order to, go through the pregnancy and bring the baby into the world safely. So another program that we ran in Trinidad for over 12 years is something called Abortion Recovery Healing. It was a peer group Bible study program, and then we also used a clinical psychologist to work with women, mainly women, who were wanting healing from a past abortion experience. So that's just a little window into what we did, as well as Bible studies for sexual abuse. Women especially who either as children or adults were victims of sexual abuse. We did Bible studies for those, and we also did peer group Bible studies for women who suffered other types of loss, like miscarriages, stillbirths. During COVID, we had women who lost jobs and homes and relationships and so on. So grief recovery was a big part of what we did as well. I hope that gives your viewers a little idea as to some of the work I've been involved in.
You seem to be dealing with a wide gamut of children and women and family health, and I like the fact that you deal with them pre, during, and post.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. But let me ask you a question about the whole question of children.
Mhm.
A few months ago, or maybe last year, I think it was, Dominica and a lot of the Caribbean countries signed on to the Samoa Agreement.
Right.
And the Samoa Agreement has in there the UNESCO technical guidance document, which is heavy on the whole question of sexual education for very young children. And I know some Caribbean countries have not signed on to it, but Dominica, we have signed. What is your how do you view that? Our perspective in Dominica has been that we needed to have looked at the document and read it through before we signed it. We signed
Right.
on.
Right.
And we are concerned that these countries, these European countries and G7 countries that want to have a certain control over developing countries are shoving things down our throat, dangling carrots so that we can bite, but we might be drinking the poison chalice. What is your view on those things?
So what you're referring to is a model of sexuality education called comprehensive sexuality education. And, the word comprehensive sounds, it gives a positive connotation, I guess. But if you really drill down into it, what it is a curriculum that radicalizes and sexualizes children from young. That UNESCO technical guidance, well, I know you took a look at it yourself. So, what it promotes is the opposite of optimal health. It's important for us to understand that there are root problems, right? And one of the root problems is teen sexual behavior itself.
Right.
It's not the absence of contraceptives or the absence of abortion or the absence of teaching condom use. That's not the problem. The problem is the promotion of early sexual debut in the first place, okay? And so although CSE tends to be promoted heavily across the globe, Canada, North America, Europe, etc., And although it gets the lion's share of funding and the lion's share of attention, believe it or not, it doesn't really come up to scratch, meaning it doesn't actually deliver on its promises. Let's put it that way. So, those who promote comprehensive sexuality education say that that model is actually going to reduce violence against girls, and it will reduce teen pregnancy, and it will reduce STIs and STDs, but none of those things are actually true based on a proper analysis of those programs and of people who have done studies on the outcomes when those programs are done. So what is actually a preferred approach or preferred model is what we call sexual risk avoidance education, which is based on a more optimal health model where we take the entire being of the person into consideration and teach them how to avoid high-risk behavior in the first place. As a matter of fact, the Center for Disease Control has said that if you wish to avoid an unplanned teen pregnancy, STIs, STDs, HIV, the best thing to do is to delay sexual debut until you are in a mutually monogamous, lifelong committed relationship with an uninfected partner. That is not the standard that CSE promotes. The very CSE curriculum, their workbooks, their worksheets, the way they train their facilitators is not about risk avoidance. It's about risk reduction. Constantly about risk reduction.
So, Rebecca, I will, permit me to interject every now and then, because I want my listeners to get a very clear view of that. When I read the document, quite frankly, and I think that's what you're leaning towards as well, I get the feel that these 5-year-old and 6-year-olds under this comprehensive sexual education formula are going to be taught to have sex and all kinds of sex.
Yeah, so there is the WHO has issued some guidelines on that, and people can look at the European guidelines, and bearing in mind that the ACP-EU treaty has been negotiated between the Caribbean, Africa, Pacific states and the EU, right? So if you look at the EU version of that WHO guidelines, which goes along with the UNESCO technical guidance, it actually promotes teaching masturbation to children from 0 to 4 years old, right? And, if people want more information, there's a website I can direct them to, which is called stopcse.org. That's stopcse.org. And if they go onto that website and just Google or do a search in the search bar for that UNESCO technical guidance or for the WHO guidelines, or they can even look for the most popular CSE curriculum is on that website. Actually, there is a page called the harms analysis page, and most of the CSE curriculums are listed there in the harms analysis. Meaning it's not just the various types of sexuality that is promoted. It's the fact that there is contraceptive promotion, condom use, the whole idea of risk reduction. In other words, not to delay sexual activity, but to enjoy all forms of sexual activity and reduce the consequences that occur. So if there is a pregnancy, you have abortion, or you use contraceptives to reduce the likelihood of pregnancy. But the thing is, what children are not taught, and young people, is that STIs and STDs are still occurring. So even if you use some form of contraceptive, it does not stop the spread of STI and STD. And as a matter of fact, in Canada, in Europe, if you look at the data, in North America, the rates of STI and STDs keep climbing, even though they are promoting and teaching heavily comprehensive sexuality education.
Right. So we have a situation now where we have a legislative framework that allows that kind of behavior in the guise or within the Samoa Agreement that our countries have signed on to. Right. And we, ladies and gentlemen, what we say is that we need to protect our children, because from a governance standpoint, apparently they're not going to help us. We need to do that ourselves. Okay. Because of that. So that is an area where we need to guard in terms of where our children are. Now we know that when you inculcate children at those formative stages, Rebecca, it is difficult to break some habits, isn't
Yeah,
it?
correct.
Right.
I mean, the HFLE, which is the curriculum framework that's being used to force fit CSE into, right? The HFLE actually, if you look at the original formulation of the HFLE, is meant to start at 6 years old.
Right.
By 7, children generally would have formed their identity and their self. Their self is generally formed by 7. What CSE is promoting and what some of the redrafters of the HFLE are promoting is dropping the age to 3. And there's obviously a reason for that, right? Because 6 is too late.
Right.
And so they the younger our children are when they get to them with certain ideas, the better it is to change the sexual and cultural norms of a society, right? If you want to change the future of a nation, if you want to change a trajectory, you have to get to the children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that I really wish everyone would really understand. So we have this situation of the children, and then what we now have is an increase in these sexual activities from one of the areas that I think is another very very critical area for us to study, and that is the whole question of gender fluidity. So you're teaching children sexuality from a perspective of gender fluidity. Is there anything in your research that speaks to that in terms of any damage done to children growing up with that kind of environment?
Well, all right. So generally, so gender dysphoria is something that does exist. But with proper care and proper guidance and proper psychological intervention, most children grow out of that gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria meaning where you feel like you're different than you are. So you might feel like you're in a girl in a boy's body or a boy in a girl's body, right?
Right.
I can tell you of one story from a friend of mine. She's based in the US and she actually advocates for the safeguarding of children against these gender ideologies, because she herself, when she was a child, she was sexually abused by different people, different adults, males, and she started feeling like she was in the wrong body, right? So even though she was female, she wanted to be male. Now, thankfully, at that time, because she's around, my age, so at that time, the whole transgender movement is not what it is now. And so she had very good counseling and support from her teachers and professionals. Her gender dysphoria was worked out. Okay. And so she did not go down the path of harmful puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones or cutting off of her breast or doing what they call chest surgery or bottom surgery, right? She was not directed down that pathway. But now, in a society that's increasingly building its rules, laws, policies, its culture on gender theory, you would find that children who find themselves in a genuine predicament and need help and support, love, care, and guidance will not get it, what they need. They would be redirected down a path of transitioning and taking harmful drugs and chemicals and surgeries to fit their body into their feelings, rather than working on the feelings without harming the body. So, yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that, and we will maybe talk a little bit about that if we have the time to. I have Pastor Matthew with me, Pastor Matthew Ogis, whom you met some time ago, and Pastor Jack Litham with me in the studio. And we have a number of people already tuned in, and some pharmacist friends of ours are on the line. Good evening, Mr. Fontaine, and Irma Leblanc watching from France. Bonsoir. And we have quite a few other people here, Greg Baptiste and Ron Joseph and Linda. Good night to you as well. So many of you joining us, and we don't mind taking your comments and your questions as well. But I don't know if Pastor Jack or Pastor Matthew want to interact with Rebecca so far. But while they're thinking of that, Matthew, you ready?
Yes, I'd love to ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, and pleasant good evening to you.
Evening, Pastor Matthew.
My dear friend. Yes, I know. I know the church. The church is normally used and probably defined as not having or doing as much as they should, and sometimes even the place as it relates to comprehensive sex education. But I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts on or the role or even responsibility of the church in relation to comprehensive sex education? Because what role should the church play as it relates to the whole concept of comprehensive sex education?
Yeah. So one, I think that the church has a demographic, right? The church has members. These members include parents, families with children. So I don't believe that the church can afford to turn a blind eye to this increasing agenda, right? What I think is that, one, churches need to understand what comprehensive sexuality education is in all its forms. So it may not initially come into your space as a gender ideology reframing curriculum. It comes very subtly in the first instance. So I think it's very important to have a really clear understanding of what comprehensive sexuality is, the myths around it, what it's designed to do, the underlying philosophy, the sources, right? And have a really good picture of what this is, so that leaders and parents and teachers and trusted adults, counselors, etc., can help parents and children identify when this content is seeping into their space, because it does so very, very deceptively in the first instance. Okay. And that's a training that we provide, actually, myself and Dr. Nancy Capola, who is a risk avoidance specialist. The next thing I think is important is to understand the risk avoidance model, because you see, I believe being a responsible citizen of any country and being a responsible Christian means that we need to know what we're fighting for. Very often we're clear about what we're fighting against, but not so clear on what we're fighting for.
Yep.
And if we are saying that as a Christian, we are salt and light, and as Christians, we are called to transform society, we need to know what kind of society we want, right? We need to know what kind of child we want to raise or build. And so having a very clear view of what optimal health, and when we talk about optimal, we talk about physical, social, mental, psychological, spiritual, even financial. When you put all these things together, what does this child or young person look like? So there needs to be a clear understanding then of what is sexual risk avoidance education. And notice I'm not using the word abstinence, because the word abstinence is too narrow a construct. Risk avoidance speaks to a broader clustering of youth behavior, right? So it speaks to alcohol, it speaks to marijuana, tobacco, illicit drugs, peer pressure, violence, child abuse, right? And of course, sexual activity. So that is another component that I believe the church needs to be clear on. And thirdly, I believe churches need to take it upon themselves to implement programs, right? Such as the one that I teach, which is Healthy Respect, or it could be another one. But an evidence-based program set up in their church to teach their own children and young people. You see, there used to be a time where we could pretty much rely on the state and on society to align with a biblical worldview or biblical values. That is no longer a given. So instead of handing our children over to the state to be taught by the state, by whatever charity comes into that school bearing whatever funding, we should be more proactive, in my humble opinion, and implement our own programs to benefit our children so that they can go into the world, go into the school, go into their communities, even in their homes, and make the best choices and be an example. And of course, you know, I'm a big advocate for the church having a voice in the public space. So obviously, I also believe that there needs to be people with the skill set trained to contend with policymakers on what is best for children, what is best for society, what do parents want their children to learn when it comes to sex education.
Rebecca, one of the challenges for that, though, is that, and we see that in quite a few nations, national leaders are no longer even considering the opinions of their population, so that they get these drafted laws and they throw them through their various parliaments and initiate on the people. And people sometimes get to know about these things and the effects only after it has become law. And sometimes it is a challenge now to get this repealed or even amended.
So, you know, and you know, in our conversations over the recent past, you'd know that I'm also a strong advocate of being in the know. I don't think we can afford to, in this season that we're in, we can't afford to depend on the channels of communication to be open to us. We have to go and be a bit more assertive about finding out what's happening in our country. You see, because a lot of these things are happening behind a veil of secrecy. And the reason that is so is because there's full awareness that if it is brought into the light, it may not thrive, it would not survive, right? And so it's not right. That is not proper governance, in my humble opinion. You know, really and truly, what should have happened with the comprehensive sex ed, it should have been brought into the open, made fully transparent, brought to our cabinets and be debated and decided on if this is something for our children or not. Instead, what they've done is they've taken the HFLE, which already exists, take out one component, which is sexuality and sexual health, and force fit the CSE into it, right? But sadly, we're living in a time where, you know, certain factors are playing out a certain way. And so we have to be a bit more assertive about demanding the answers. What is happening? Who is doing what? You know, going to our various public officials and asking the questions and getting the answers and organizing to respond. I think the challenge is it's asking the church to stretch itself beyond its usual modus operandi. Yeah. It's uncomfortable for the church because we're not used to doing this. We're used to operating in a certain space. In the Caribbean, though, we don't have the benefit of NGOs and lobbying groups and well-funded civil society like the US and perhaps Europe does. And I believe that in this case, the church is a very, very important component, a very important component in a national landscape. And so we may have to dig deeper and find mechanisms to looking for the best word here, the most favorable word to use, to compel our our government and public policy, you know, officers and
push them somewhere.
to engage, you know, to compel them to engage.
Let's take a call, and then I'm going to go to Pastor Jack. Somebody's on my telephone. Good evening. You are connected.
Loving people, blessings to you all.
Blessings to you as well.
Blessings.
Thanks for that program. Is she a doctor, medical practitioner or something?
No. She's
I'm a lawyer and
she's a lawyer by
what you might call a social entrepreneur.
But you have all that covered already. Because Pastor Rob is everything you see. Anyway, just want to make something. Have anybody hear about adrenochrome? They refer to it as the drug of the rich and famous.
Adrenochrome?
Adrenochrome.
Adrenochrome. No, I haven't heard about it.
It has to do with the adrenaline of children that are being terrorized and terrified. And at that point, they're being slain. And the blood is being used to make that drug. It keeps them young and alive. And they're not, because they're looking for the fountain of youth. They're looking for eternal life. That is, life is already eternal. That thing where you have your children, that comprehensive, that's why it's going to catch a lot of people. Comprehensive. You see how deceptive the devils are? You have a child going to school. You cannot determine what the child is going to do with the sexuality. So in a matter of a month or two, your child come up and say, a boy come up and say, I'm now a girl. Or a girl come and say, I'm now a boy. And there is nothing you can do within the law or the system to stand up against that. So when we talk about we live in a democracy, we are free to do what they tell us to do. And that's what it is. And with that level of imposition, all these big oil countries, where they is for adultery, they stone a woman to death. They are not going and try to impose the thing on them. So little birds like us, little feathers like us, just little hatchlings, they figure out they can come and force down the garbage down our throat. But in the country, they already live in the abominable lives for centuries. Just check what happened in slavery and all what they have done. So it is sad to see how we are conformist, and the churches are guilty as well. This one said that could never happen in Dominica history, not under his watch. And he run and sign up the agreement where we give our children, where there is no more what they call again, the age of consent. That's what they're getting rid of, So you have pedophiles and they have the rainbow. It is pink, yellow, baby blue, and white and maroon. So the gays have theirs and the pedophiles have theirs and the protesting. The world is a sick place. No, you have to divide the good from the sheep. So all these leaders, whether church or politician, I want to see all your fiber. Years ago, I tell you, they come in for Pastor Rodney, years ago.
I'm still here.
Because I know what we are up against. Thanks for the education. Blessings.
You're welcome. Let's do this one. Come back to you. Hold on a while, Rebecca.
He mentions the...
Hold on a while, Rebecca. Hold on just 1 second. Good evening on the telephone. You were connected.
Good evening.
Yes.
Evening.
I want to say thank you to your guest.
Dr. George.
I also want to say thank you for yourself and Pastor Jack. I say that because it's a very timely subject. It's a very sensitive subject. I think the attorney is doing a good job of being sensitive as much as it is. Pastor Rodney, you might recognize my voice. But,
I just did.
Yeah, attorney, you are doing a very good job here, because what is happening there, this is such a sensitive topic. So much so that I teach 7 universities in the United States. And when a student tells you that their name is Randy Rodney, but their preferred name is Jane, you best believe on their record you put Jane. That's the law. That is the law. All right? So now when you were in the classroom and you were teaching and Jane raised their hand, okay, Rodney raised his hand, and you say, Randy. He said, my name is not Randy. My name is Jane. And you can get in, and I know, attorney, you might be aware of how these rules go. So it's such a sensitive issue. The other thing that I would like to comment on, I think also that, oh my God, this is just so sensitive. Again, I don't want to mix religion with law, because I don't know how to say it, but I will just say what I think, from my spirit. I think God loves everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really, and I want to speak on that. I think God loves everybody. However, I know God has his laws. If I go down that road, I will be going down in such a deep road. It can offend some people. God also have what is right and wrong. Alas, I do not want to go down that road. I look for the state of the United States. I don't know how to say it, but my attorney, I have one question for you, just one. Do you believe that children have the right to choose their sexuality?
Rebecca, you heard that?
Yeah, I heard it.
All right. All right. Dr. George, Rebecca will answer your question. I'm sure you'll be listening.
Yeah.
Yes, Rebecca.
All right. So, the caller before this one spoke about age of consent, and I want to alert listeners who may not know that Dominica's age of consent is 16.
Mm-hmm.
And even that is too low, and there should be some consideration. In Trinidad, for instance, it's 18, and believe it or not, but various agencies are lobbying to change that. So we changed it from 16 to 18 to line up with our Marriage Act, and now many advocates are lobbying to get it back down to 16, and it behooves me as to why they would want to do that, because it sends a certain message to our children, right?
Mm-hmm.
So something for Dominicans to consider. Also, I learned your legal drinking age is 16, and
Right.
that's alarmingly too low. And if you understand the way youth risk behaviors cluster together, usually when young people begin to engage in one high-risk behavior, right? So drinking alcohol under the age of 21 is a high-risk behavior. In Trinidad, the legal age is 18. In the US, it's 21, and there's a reason for that. If you think about it, you can't even get proper car insurance under 21, because when those actuaries sit down and they calculate their risk to the insurance company for drivers under the age of 21 holding insurance, it's a high rate of insurance compared to someone over 21. I assume you know about this, right?
The sad thing, Rebecca, is that sex has become so glamorized now, and governing authorities has taken that as their poster child, if you ask me, that none of these very serious other areas are not considered. Right? When for example there was a debate to reduce the age of consent in Dominica, quite a few people stood vehemently against that, and one of our arguments was that how do you give a 16-year-old consent to have sex, but the Marriage Act number 30 says that if you are getting married under the age of 18, you need the consent of your parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just did not make sense to us, and the
correct.
government went ahead nonetheless and did that.
Yeah.
I guess they were under pressure from some people to do it.
I suppose at some point we may have to come together and form a more powerful lobbying voice and be much more persistent. I think what happens is we think that certain things are a given, So for instance, you see, and again, it's a lack of knowledge too, right? Teenagers are actually trending in the opposite direction. Teen sex is trending in the opposite direction. So what you see on television, what you hear on the music, what you see on billboards, etc., that glamorizes alcohol and glamorizes tobacco and glamorizes sex satisfies the advertisement industry and all the manufacturers and the people that benefit from that. But in terms of what parents want for their children, if you survey the parents and you survey the children themselves, what they are saying is that's not what they want. And so maybe we have to do more to alert our policymakers and to make demands across the Caribbean on what is best for our children. On the issue of whether a child can choose their sexuality, I mean, all right. So as far as I'm concerned, and as far as biology speaks to us, we have male and female.
Right.
It's wired into our very DNA. Okay. So if a child, and I spoke about gender dysphoria at the very, very beginning of the program, if a child has a disconnect, there needs to be some further investigation and care. Even the CAS report that came out of the UK very recently, pretty much criticizing the gender clinics for just, running along with what children are saying and prescribing harmful puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgery, etc., etc. That CAS report pretty much says that is not the in the best interest of children. Let's put it this way. It's not in the best interest of children to just hear a child say, well, I'm a boy, even though they're presenting as a girl, and just go ahead with what they're saying and do what they're saying. That it might be ideologically comfortable to some people, but from an evidence-based health perspective, more and more reports are coming out that is saying this is not in the best interest of children. Even if you, there's a young lady called Chloe Cole, who right now is suing the medical community that led her down that transition path. So she did the entire thing, the top surgery and the bottom surgery, and then she detransitioned. But at this point, she'll never be able to breastfeed a child. And she's not even sure that she can give birth. And so she's now suing the medical practitioners that led her down the transition path. So we need to be very, very careful. And I know that it's a hugely contentious issue, perhaps more in the West than it is in the Caribbean. But, there's a saying, when the West sneezes, the Caribbean catches the cold. So we need to put safeguards in place. We need to look for the best evidence even from now and inform our parents, inform our leaders, inform our policymakers. Look, this is the best evidence that's coming down the pipeline that perhaps wasn't there 10, 15, 20 years ago. And we need to push that out into the public space.
Right. Pastor Jack.
Yes. Good evening, madam. It seems from what I've learned from you, you have made more progress in Trinidad and have more organizations pertaining to what we desire as Christians. This is that sex agenda program. How do you navigate through all this curriculum and program and organization without making it sound like one of our other religious ideas?
Good question.
How do you go for that? Because you have to go through the political barriers, political agendas. But how do you just present all these dynamic and powerful programs and educational things without making it sound like one just, here they come again, and another religious program? It's all religious conviction.
All right. So good evening. And first of all, it may appear that Trinidad has more organizations, but we actually don't really. I mean, I'm Trinidadian, and I've made it my life's mission, I suppose, to contend on these matters. And so it's a big part of my life that I would take information that I find to groups that are in existence and sort of, help to inform and so on and so on. And on the CSE issue in particular, I have taken evidence into various places that the evidence was needed. I think on the issue of being Christians who are speaking in the public space, I think what we have to do is probably come together and help each other better. And one of the things that I have learned over the 15 years is how to do the truth and reason presentation of things.
Okay.
Right? The Bible calls us to be to speak the truth with reason, and there are certain spheres, especially the political public sphere, where quoting a scripture may not convey what we need them to understand.
Okay.
So while that scripture means a lot to me or to you, it may not carry the message we needed to carry to someone in a public office. So what we then have to do is do the hard work. You see, all truth, if you think about it, truth is parallel. And so let's take one example. Okay, those of us who are Christian parents, we would read a verse in the Bible that talks about refraining from sex outside of marriage. But if I go to a public official and say, well, this is my belief and I want you to teach the children my belief, it may not go across very well, right? But the evidence, in searching for the evidence, and this is how I came across risk avoidance model and how I came across healthy respect, is because I went looking for a program that lines up with what is true for human nature, the way we were designed to function, right? And so I'm saying that to say that there is evidence, there are facts, there is truth existing in other spheres of learning apart from scripture that we could draw from and pull together and present to our public officials and say, look, consider this, and this. For instance, I'll give you two quick examples in the context of youth development. There is an organization that mapped hundreds of thousands of youth across the globe, and they looked for something called developmental assets. And what developmental assets help children to thrive and make healthy choices. And they came up with a basket of 40 assets, very clearly delineated assets. And based on their research, they showed that the less assets these children have, the more they engage in high-risk behavior like tobacco use, alcohol abuse, juvenile delinquency, violence, etc., right? And that is, in other words, that's a body of evidence that could be presented to a public official. Mm-hmm. That lines up with what we believe, but it's not you presenting a scripture. Okay. Then there is another institute called the Sage Institute that does poverty research. And believe it or not, the research on poverty that they did from a youth perspective and how youths make their decisions, they found something called a success sequence. And the success sequence says that if you complete your education, then get a job, then look for love and marriage, then have children, when you order your life in that sequence, you actually increase your probability of not being poor or having a low quality of life by 98%, between 96 and 98%. In other words, only about 4% of people who follow that sequence will still end up falling through some crack. And so we know this to be true because we know this from our scripture and the way God's design, that God's design in scripture tells us this, right? That you be conscientious, that you work hard, and that you marry, and that children come in the context of a healthy, intact, two-parent, stable marriage. Mm-hmm. But if we just quote the scripture and verse, we may not convey that message in a way that a public policy, secular, or humanist person might be able to understand. So that's just an example. I hope it's helpful to you.
Thanks for that. Let's take a 2-minute pause, and we're going to come right back. On the other side, Rebecca, I want us to begin to speak about the situations and their healing, the transgender and the healing, the the abuse and the healing, the abortion and the healing, that sort of thing. Because I want us to be able to give a good diet tonight. So we touch every person in the audience. When we come back from the break, we will do just that.
Gotcha.
It's important that we remember what can happen when a society is completely taken over by a secular government and the church is silenced. And that's what happened in Germany. And we need to remember. And so I'm grateful that we are taking a day at least once a year to highlight this. This was Nazi Germany in the late 1930s, but there was no church resistance to this. And two of the heroes that we're familiar with today, one, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, also Martin Niemöller, one of the pastors in Germany at the time, along with Bonhoeffer, who was resisting the Nazi regime. Mm-hmm. Both of them went to jail. Let me read Niemöller's famous poem because it captures so well something that can happen in any country when we forget our heritage and our faith commitment. Here it is. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Mm. The issue is that we as the church have to stand up when human beings are suffering. I think that's a clarion call for the church, no matter the philosophy. We need and are compelled by the love of Christ to engage a culture when human beings made in the image of God are being degraded by government.
This Wing Summer. Get ready for the biggest and wildest deals from Flow.
Who got the best deals? It's Flow. But the postpaid Wi-Fi you bow. Multi-million house save more for sure.
This is We Summer. Bundle broadband now with postpaid and get your bill cut in half. Plus, get up to 4 Samsung Galaxy smartphones for only $4.
50,000 in cash is that. 15,000 in cash, win that.
Win $15,000 in cash when you sign up, switch up, top up, or pay up with Flow.
Summer. Flow says this is We Summer. We Summer.
Flow, keeping you connected. Terms and conditions apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking with Rebecca Govaya this evening on Kingdom Connection, and I'm really grateful that so many of you join us. And of course, some of you are calling, but I'm limiting the calls because I want us to get as much of Rebecca as possible. However, let's see who's on this line. Good evening. You are connected.
Good evening, Pastor, and good evening to your guests and others. Pastor,
yes.
I was under the illusion that the drinking age was 18 in Dominica. I was surprised to hear 16.
An illusion that was.
And also, you cannot go to Social Security and get a Social Security. You cannot join Social Security until you're 18. So how is it that you can make those kinds of decisions and you cannot even start to have Social Security and practically a job?
Let me surprise you about something else. So we lowered the age of consent to 16 years old. Now, so a 16-year-old can give consent to sex. Do you know that if she gets pregnant, she cannot go to the nurse by herself? She must go with her parents.
That's right. Okay. A doctor will not use it.
But you know, Pastor, my dear, are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you.
My dear mother was the one who raised it from 14 to 16. You know, she was a famous Dominican, the first female to serve as a government minister, and she wanted it to 18, but the men would not agree to it.
It's the men.
So, they got it to 16.
Yeah.
And that's where it stayed. It has not moved, apparently.
No. It was 18. It was 18 in Dominican, reduced to 16.
Reduce it.
What year?
That was reduced to 16, maybe around 2014, 2013, 2014, thereabout.
Oh, so something recent. Okay.
Yeah. Very recent.
When was it raised to 18?
It was raised to 18. I don't remember when it was raised to 18, but it had been 18 from the time I was a young boy, quite frankly. But it was reduced to 16, I think around 2013. I'm sure if Delia is listening, she'll tell me exactly what year, because she was one of those, along with us, who was advocating that it should not have been reduced to 16. All right.
You see, that's the thing. These things are so seldom talked about. We don't even know those dates when those things were changed, or when, we don't even know. I was surprised to hear 16. What? So the drinking age is stuck, Pastor? What
Yes.
is the drinking age? Just for my
16. 16.
16. See what I mean? I thought that was 18 all
18.
along. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Keep up the
much.
good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's take a few more of you calls. Good evening. I'd really like the rest of you to be brief in your comments and your questions, please. You are connected.
Thank you so much, and I am so happy that I had another opportunity to speak to the SN.
Yes, Dr. George.
Attorney.
Yes, sir.
She's online. She's hearing you. She's hearing you.
Okay, good. Excellent. All right. I have two very direct points, and I want to make them very quick and short. One, yes, we are speaking about the age of consent. I think 16 is too young. That's my view. Alas, if I wrong. Yeah. Now, the other thing I want to say, I don't know if that's outside of the purview of the discussion, but in the United States, one must be 21 years old to buy alcohol. But you can become a military soldier, 18, and they can give you a M16, it's a U.S. created weapon. The AK-47 is a Russian created weapon. So at 18 years, you can have those weapons, but you cannot have a drink. I would like your view on that. And that's number one. And number two is the idea of having a 16-year-old child having consent to have sex. I think you were very clear. I just asked it in a supplementary, just, but I want you to be clear. I don't think that's right.
You're a political scientist. Thank you, sir.
So, but I want to get the question. So, the first one is the whole idea that you need to be 21 to buy alcohol, but you can still have military weapons to fight war.
Right.
And the other one is the 16 years old. Yeah, that's the two questions. And thank you so much. And Attorney, you are doing a good job, and this is a very good program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's go right across to you, Rebecca.
Yes, sir. Okay, so I would frame that in the context of brain development of adolescents. Okay, the neuroscientists have said that the adolescent brain is not fully developed until 25 in females and 27 in males, all things being equal. What that means is the prefrontal cortex of the brain that's responsible for judgment and reasoning and abstract thinking and connecting actions to consequences is still developing at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, right? What this means then is that we should be using more science and data to decide what children can or cannot do, and not political ideologies or other types of, whether it's pharmaceutical ideology or whatever other ideologies are, and money, of course, right? Money drives a lot of policies. Because let me tell you, and this is just not that I'm dodging the gun issue, but just on the consent issue. Statistically, if young people delay sexual activity until they're out of their teens, and delay use of alcohol until 21, and tobacco, right? So tobacco and alcohol are what we call gateway drugs. In and of themselves, they have laws that govern their use, but if you use them, it's gateway to other harder substances. If young people delay the use of these substances till 21, statistically, there's a huge drop in the probability of that young person becoming an addict for life. Now, this is not good for the industry that profit off of unhealthy behaviors and unhealthy choices. And so this is why, one of the things that I'm very strong about is that even while we are contending with the politicians on policies, We have to do better to arm our children and young people with the skills and the tools and the knowledge to determine and make better decisions about their life. When it comes to the gun issue, again, it's the same principle that applies. If the adolescent brain is still under construction at 16, 17, 18, 19, and you put a gun in the hands of these children, especially where there may not be proper vetting, you don't know if they are already using substances, you don't know if other high-risk behaviors are already happening, you don't know if there's a mental health issue, etc., etc., you are setting up that individual for carrying out harmful behavior. The same as with any of the other behaviors. All right. I hope that answers that. And what was his other question? Whether I'm sure about the age of consent? Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Rebecca, I want us to get back to the question of healing. We have another 28 minutes on the program this evening. And I particularly want us to go there because, like I said, I'm sure we have some people in our audiences, and let me attach that with Jack's comment or question earlier on, that sometimes you can't find a biblical verse to answer them. But there are people who have had abortions. And one of the things that I heard you said recently is you spoke about the man and sometimes his own, how you call it, hurt or pain, that trauma that he goes through, even when he didn't have the abortion himself. I wanted to speak to that and make some comments kindly about healing and how could they find healing and so on.
All right. So, let me just first address whether there is a need for healing. Yes, there is. More and more data has been coming out regarding the mental health impact following an abortion. And I will just quote one very one from Dr. Ferguson, some of Dr. Ferguson's research, right? A study done by Dr. David Ferguson found that abortion was associated with a 30% increase in the rate of mental disorder, and approximately 1.5 to 5.5% of all mental disorders may be attributable to abortions. There was a study done in Canada, and they found that 56.9% of women and 39.6% of men who were involved in first trimester abortions were much more distressed than the control groups they compared them with that gave birth to children. In other words, and I could go on and on about the statistics, but I want your listeners to trust when I say that there is, in fact, an emotional, mental, psychological, and spiritual, for those who are spiritually formed, spiritual impact. But the good thing is, and the good news is, that our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ gave himself on that cross for every single mistake that we would ever make. And that includes the abortion decision. People that I've spoken with, there's almost a subconscious belief that the abortion decision is somehow outside of God's grace. I'm just here to tell us it is not outside of God's grace. His death on the cross, the shedding of his blood was for every single sin, every single error, every single mistake. And his word is clear that he separates our sin from us as far as the east is from the west. In other words, never the twain shall meet. What happens though is we self-incriminate, we attack ourselves. There's some research that's done that says there's one main positive emotion that someone feels after an abortion, and that's relief, except where it might be the male who's in disagreement, or sometimes even the female who's in disagreement, but she's being coerced. We've had stories of women with guns put to their head to have an abortion. But following the experience, you have a flood of 150 negative emotions on average, any combination from about pool of 150 negative emotions. And so I strongly encourage persons who have, if you know someone who's had an abortion experience, strongly encourage them to pursue healing. In terms of how I can help with that is that we do provide training. We've done it in Trinidad, many training. We've trained people in Barbados. We've trained people in St. Lucia to carry out peer group support for abortion healing. So that's something that could be done. If, however, someone wants to access a Bible study, like if there's a counselor who's online listening to me and they want to know which Bible studies they could use and maybe use some of the tools in their practice, I'm happy to refer them to their Bible studies like Forgiven and Set Free, Healing the Father's Heart. There's a list of different tools that I'm happy to send to you that you could share or post or however you want to do it. But I really believe that in every island of this region, we should have an abortion recovery healing ministry, because it has happened, it is happening, and it will happen in the future. Hopefully, as we talk more about it, there will be less and more support for people. But we do need abortion recovery help to people on all our islands, and Dominica is no exception. But the Lord, I have personally seen women go through that abortion recovery healing, and the transformation in their lives is like night and day.
Let's come back to that. Somebody's on telephone. Good evening. You are connected.
And I'll be very brief. There's two things I want to say. One is a question and a statement.
Uh-huh.
First of all, I want the medical doctor, the lawyer, and whatever to check in which group in America, maybe Europe, that has the highest suicide rate. Right? I wanted to find that out, because you're 16-year-old, you're 10 and 12-year-old, and then you grow up to be 21 and whatever. You look yourself in the mirror, you see I've created a prick. And I'm not saying that out of my head. Research shows the highest suicide rate among the transgender community is not even drug addicts that have a high suicide rate as them. The other thing, our children were never our children, Our children are not our children, medically and chemically. They have they have masculinized the women and the feminization of the men, chemically and medically. It's a game, and then all of a sudden you feel you're not made in a male body. These things are done through high scientific research for decades. It's all about population extermination.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that. Blessings.
All right. I made a comment when we started the program this evening, Rebecca, and I was non-scientific, relating the number of what I think drug-induced psychosis in Dominica with the legalization, if you like, and liberalization of cannabis. And our government says that, you can't be arrested for a joint or two joints, and you can plant fruit trees in the yard and so on and so on. Okay. And I believe since that has happened, and I don't have hard figures to back it up, it's just that I'm seeing more and more young men and young women who have now to be treated for drug-induced psychosis, and some of them are pregnant. Some of them that now I want you to I don't know. I know that some of those things are related. All these behaviors are interrelated. When you get that trauma, and we were talking a while ago about abortion healing. How do we find a way to repair, if there's such a word like that, for that kind of challenge with these people?
So there is evidence that shows, especially among teenagers that have an abortion experience, one of the tendency is to drift heavily into drug and alcohol use, because it dulls the pain. But it's sort of a subconscious response, if you know what I mean. It's not necessarily that every person that may happen to, where there is that in the history that they would say, I'm doing this in order to do this. It's sort of the brain's coping mechanism in a subconscious way. So you can see why. See, all these things are so interconnected, because if you have your age of consent at 16 and your legally drinking age at 16, and you end up in a crisis where you become pregnant as a teen and then you're coerced into having an abortion, you can see how it can then lead to use and misuse of other substances. So it's imperative, first of all, for us to understand the risk, to understand the connection between different things. I do recall Dr. Capola and I were having a conversation once, and she said to me, she said, you know, Rebecca, where there's a high amount of child abuse and exploitation of girls and women, you find that there's also a high tobacco and alcohol use. So I think there's need for better education, first, secondly, for prevention programs, so that we get to our children and we equip, empower, and educate them before they get to those ages where they either are coerced into certain situations or manipulated into certain situations. And thirdly, where it has already happened, we must rescue and restore our children and our adult men and women. We have to. If we don't do that, you know, Pastor Randy, what we're basically doing is perpetuating harm from one generation to another, from one demographic to another. We're just perpetuating the trauma. And so, you know, even though I'm not a psychologist, but I do a lot of reading and I have a lot of peers and that work in the field. And, you know, for 15 years, we worked with women providing psychological care and biblical counseling care. So I can say with some degree of certainty that healing is needed, and it must be a priority. And if the church has to position itself to be a point of contact to begin this priority of healing, then let it come from the church, you know,
Right.
and hopefully it will spread to other. But I did hear that there is a mental health crisis among teens, and they're in your island, and it does concern me as well.
Matthew, you look like you wanted to make a comment there.
Not exactly. I actually was writing down something. Yeah. So you could.
All right. So Rebecca, we have a nexus, as it were, in behavior between drug abuse and sexual and all the others, right? We have that. What I'm concerned about now is reparation, repairing. We will try to do both of them, but I am, you know, of the view that we have too few areas where we bring people in for healing. The church over the years have said, let's just pray for them. Jack and I, we have disagreed with that position
All the time.
all the time. And so I am concerned about that. Let me take a call. And on the telephone, you have 60 seconds with me. Unfortunately, it's already 7:45. You connected. Good night.
That's good. That's enough. Then. Good afternoon, Pastor Randy.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
And your guest.
Yes, sir.
Pastor Randy, I tune in late.
Okay.
But I have a question for the guest.
Yes.
In that's a debate that is really hot up here. And I would like to know her views in terms of abortion, when you have a rape or a incest, like your family member, uncle, or when it is a danger to the mother. Sometimes a woman is pregnant, and if she don't have abortion, she might lose her life or lose the baby life. Is it the same thing as normal abortion, or just somebody just decide, you know what, they had sex and they don't want the child to go through it? I would just like that to differentiate the two, and what's your views on that, if you understand my question.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, Rebecca.
All these hard questions I'm getting. All right, so let me start by saying, you know, it is really a heartbreaking tragedy when anyone of any age, anywhere in this world and in the Caribbean, is a victim of exploitation, a victim of incest, a victim of rape. No one, when you think about it, it dehumanizes an individual when they are subjected to that. And that is not something that the church can turn a blind eye to, either by commission or omission in any way. However, from what I've read, and this is from personal stories of people as well as research, so the rape and incest is a first violence against this individual, and the abortion can very well be a second violence. There's some research done by Dr. David Reardon, and what he found was that victims of rape and incest, he looked at those who aborted and those who carried the baby to term and then either parented or placed for adoption. And he found that the women who were given the love and the care and the support and everything that they needed to carry through with the pregnancy and then either parent or adopt, healed better and faster from the initial violence than those who were coerced into an abortion. I've read stories and I've had personal stories of women here in Trinidad that, and let me just say, I should preempt all of this by saying 1% of victims in those particular scenarios, about 1% become pregnant. So that's 1 in 100. Okay, so it's not as prevalent as the abortion advocates might make it out to be. But in any event, in that 1% of cases, there's research that's showing otherwise. There's some other things I want to say about this. For instance, the perpetrator of the violence, okay, is not given the death penalty. But the innocent victim of this crime, which is the baby in the womb, and you see, if we believe that every life has equal value, then it means every child in the womb at whatever stage has equal value to you listening in to me right now, and to myself and the pastors on this call. And so if we truly believe that, then we must expend every effort to make sure that we support and safeguard life, and not just the life of the child, but the life of the mother, because they are both equally valuable. We also, I've had a victim of incest say to me, she said, Rebecca, when I was forced to go for that abortion as a preteen, or just about a teen, like 12, 13, she said what that did was take the shame away from my family, because they didn't have to deal with the questions and answering anybody's questions and deal with watching me be pregnant. But it did nothing for me, because I was traumatized. And this was someone speaking to me as an adult who still had not healed from that trauma. And she said, not only that, but the evidence of what was done to me was taken away. So nobody was arrested. There was no justice in that scenario. There was no justice for the victim, and there was no justice for the child that was conceived. All it did was remove somebody's shame, the parents, the adults in the scenario, and it got the perpetrator off the hook.
Wow.
So we have to be very careful when we are saying and it's natural, it's natural. I completely understand it. We would not be human if we did not want to alleviate people's suffering. It's natural and normal, especially as caretakers of society. We want to alleviate people's suffering, but we have to look at all the pieces, and the pieces must come together in a very coherent way. If we say that it's okay morally, now it may be that a legal case could be made out in a rape and incest scenario, but morally still, it is an incorrect position, because fundamentally, it is always morally wrong to aim at the death of an innocent person. Always. All right. And the ICCPR Article 6 talks about everybody having the right to life, and that our laws should protect life. And sometimes that means going a further distance. Sometimes it means providing housing and shelter and food and clothing and counseling and support and compassion. on a level that perhaps the church needs to be doing better. The other thing I had someone say is, well, if I was raped and I don't know who the father is, and we may not know who the father is, but we know who the mother is.
Yeah.
And sometimes we forget that this child in the womb belongs to two people. What I mean, two people came together to conceive this child. It's not just one person. And there are women who I would tell you, this is someone's story, and she said to me, Rebecca, my child was conceived in rape, and I wanted to carry out the pregnancy as a young Christian, but everybody around me told me not to, including the pastor, including the medical doctors, including family. She said there was only one family member who said, listen, if you want to go through with this pregnancy, I will support you. And the two of them rallied that pregnancy out together. And would you believe that she's in her 50s now? And that child is the only child she ever had.
Wow.
Never had another child after that, even though she had other relationships and married and never conceived again. And from that child came multiple grandchildren that she would never have had she not persevered in an adverse circumstance. And sometimes we forget that part of being human is overcoming adversity. And so we keep trying to sanitize life and make life easy and comfortable. And sometimes we help people make a decision that actually goes against certain fundamental principles in preserving life.
Because very often you make that decision based on just the now and what you see ahead of you. Rebecca, unfortunately, we have to wind up. And I say unfortunately because I think we're having a very, very great conversation here. And I'm hoping that we can do that again because we need to educate our people. I will tell all people right here and now that I've made a promise to Rebecca that she's going to come back to Dominica and we're going to be doing some of the healing of the trainers, some of the training of the trainers for abortion healing, both for men and women. And we're going to be doing some of these things because we believe that we need to touch people where they hurt and where they pain. So I'm going to give each of you 60 seconds to wind up, and I'm going to start with you, Rebecca, and we'll do Matthew and then then Jack here.
Well, thank you for having me online, and I'm happy to come back. And to all your listeners, thank you for giving me the space in your home. And I just pray that the Lord will bless you and keep you, that He would guide you by His Holy Spirit, and that wherever you need Him tonight, that He will be that to you. Whatever comfort you need, whatever healing you need, whatever discernment you need or wisdom, that He will give that to you as you need it tonight and in the days ahead. So God bless each of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Matthew.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much again. Ms. Guevara, thank you for all your thoughts. Thank you so much. I know that maybe some of you listening to us this evening, and I know that you may be going through some dark moments of, where you're thinking, and like was said earlier on, God is still the God of healing, and He's still very, very present. And I know sometimes that many people become silent about many issues because of how they feel, whether they've either been guilty of a particular situation or sometimes get trapped in another instance too. But I also want to say to us this evening, as it relates to the voice of the church in any situation, any societal ill, that because we are in need of healing, because we may either be hurt, it does not make it right. And we heard it from Sister Guevara this evening, that it does not make it right. And so God gives us the strength and the ability to be able to see that, in the midst of what we may have been going or have gone through, that He's still healer and He's still able to help in the midst of all our circumstances. So God's blessings on everybody, and trusting that you will have a great thing as you continue to hold on to the principles of
Thank you very much, Pastor Matthew.
Pastor Matthew. Yes. Tonight I feel very refreshed. I want to thank our guests very much because of the way we are ending the program. Having been brought up in a spirit of condemnation and judgment over everything that have to do with sexual sin and abortion, and all the matter of gay sex and all that. I'm happy tonight that we're ending on a place where the emphasis is on healing.
Yes.
And that I am rebuked and encouraged to make it known that there is healing. We come into organizations and programs that inform those who have been hurt, offended, traumatized, that our emphasis is no longer on judgment, because some of the people who need the healing are scared to come to programs because what they hear is judgment.
Right.
And so tonight I am really, really encouraged and relieved, and I hope some of our listeners will know that there is a place and a number that they can call, even though we may not have the organization and whatever it takes to do the job properly, but we can start somewhere by offering some healing, not just pray for them, just healing and restoration for whatever circumstance we find ourselves in. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you very much, Pastor Jack. And thanks again, Rebecca, for joining me. We will keep that conversation alive and going. Pastor Matthew, have a good night. All of you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on Kingdom Connection this evening. I'm really appreciative of all your company. Those of you who are viewing on Facebook, I'm glad to have you. The many of you who are online with us. We'll be back with you again next Monday evening for Kingdom Connection. I'll be back on your radio on Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. for Rise and Shine. Until then, my name is Randy. You go out there, have a great Monday and have a wonderful week. God bless you.
We hang our heads in shame. We ask who's to blame for this morass of moral decay. Leadership gone